Have you ever had a moment when you meet someone and realize that although you don't know them personally, you 1000% know their work? I had that moment on a recent trip. This episode's guest, Gordon Chambers, was part of some of my favorite songs and truly views his work as a ministry. I'll let you hear more about that from the man himself, and will just say that this was truly fun to record, and I'm grateful to Gordon for sharing his time and his stories with me for the podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please share it with friends and go back through the catalog and check out some of the other episodes. Part of my goal is to give you insight into people that may be a little bit outside your bubble. This episode and every other episode is hopefully delivering on that goal. Thanks. Gordon, I want to start by asking you to introduce yourself to our listeners. And by the way, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. My name, last time I checked, was Gordon Anthony Chambers. That's my full name. I was born in the Bronx. I'm a Libra, October of 1969. Very proud to have been born in the 60s. I was raised by my Jamaican parents, Byron and Valerie Chambers, who moved the family in seeking, better public education for the kids to Teaneck, New Jersey, the first town to voluntarily desegregate its school systems in 1977. Then I graduated Teaneck High School, went to Brown University at age 16, graduated at age 20. I started my first and only day job at Essence Magazine. My last post there was entertainment editor. And while I was there was when my musical career became more well-known to the general public. That it was while I was there that I wrote my first hit songs that we'll talk more about in the interview. But some of the songs included Brownstone's If You Love Me, Anita Baker's Grammy-winning I Apologize, the Grammy-nominated song from this film Set It Off for Brandy Tamia, Gladys Knight, and Chaka Khan called Missing You. I left in 1997 to just go on to do music full-time, and now I've been living in Brooklyn since 1995. So that's my origin story. Those are the people, the places, some of the faces. When people ask me what I do for a living, I say I'm a musician. By saying I'm a musician, I think it encompasses the very things I've done in music, the various things, and that's just the way I think of myself. I think of myself as a musician. I think of myself as engaging in the world with, I think, the spiritual power that music has. Music connects people. Music can make people emote. Music communicates with people beyond politics, beyond language. By saying I'm a musician, it means I'm a part of that form and that modality of communication. To break that down more specifically, the roles I've played in my career are as singer, because I've made 4 solo albums that have included collaborations with some of my friends, like the Grammy winners Layla Hathaway and Let Us See and Grammy nominee Carl Thomas, as well as the late, great Roy Hargrove. But I'm also a record producer. I've written and produced records for Whitney Houston and Gerald Levert and Aretha Franklin, may they all rest in peace. I'm also a performer. I've toured the world, performing at clubs, festivals, concerts, all over the world as a performer. And I'm also a vocal coach. I have coached hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of singers from all walks of life, from children to people on Broadway, people auditioning for Broadway, to recording artists like Tyla from South Africa, to actors, to all kinds of people I've coached in terms of the voice, in terms of discovering their singing voices and building up their confidence through singing. As a musician, those are the roles that I do play and have played.
Gordon, before we get into melody and song, I just want to, as I always do, ask, how would you say we know each other?
I met Keith, as I've met many friends, on our mutual friend, Reginald Van Lee, great humanitarian, philanthropist, corporate titan, supporter of the arts, on his international birthday trip that he celebrated with friends all over the world, where friends have come and nominated where the trip should be. And so I met you on our most recent leg of that birthday trip in Namibia.
Yeah, and that's an easy one. I have some guests on that I've known for decades, and we honestly just met a couple months ago. And I've been invited on that trip for probably a decade, and this year it worked out that I could go. And You meet people casually on the trip, and I remember I think we were on a ride either to Victoria Falls or to the
Yep.
Four Points, sort of where the four countries meet, and we were sitting across the
Right.
aisle from each other on the bus and just got a chance
Yeah.
to talk. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to need to have him on the podcast if he'll do it." So thank you for
Thank you so
coming
much
on.
for coming. And it was so funny that when I saw you at first, I thought, oh, him and his wife, they didn't really know anybody. They seemed quieter. But once we started talking, Keith, I said, Keith, he don't never stop talking. This man will talk me to death. And here we are talking to the followers of your podcast. And I hope this talk will be inspirational and fun for people to listen to.
And Gordon, as we talked about this in preparation, you mentioned that the common thread or the way that you engage with music as a musician is through melody. And I was wondering
Yeah.
if you could share a little bit more about that and maybe define what melody means to you or how people should think about melody when they hear you say it.
The melody of a song is the most important thing, in my opinion, of the song. It's the thing that touches people the most. It's the thing that people connects people. Like people, no matter how quote unquote good your or bad your voice is, when everyone sings in a room happy birthday to you, they're singing the melody, happy birthday. And it doesn't really make a difference how good or bad your voice is.
Right.
It connects people like you everybody hits that melody together and it connects people. It makes a memory. And I think the most important thing in a song is the melody because that's the connecting factor of it. That's the thing that you don't have to have the greatest voice to sing the melody. If you sing the melody and you can tell the story of the songwriter's intention and people can sing along with you. I mean, a lot of really great singers who are, mellifluous and technical and do all the things, part of, one of the great criticisms of the most greatest technicians is that they don't sing as melodically.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Whereas some of the singers that are not as technically proficient, what works about their singing is that they sing the melody. And like you have singers like, for instance, Dionne Warwick, living legend. She was able to sing these very complex melodies that Burt Bacharach would write for her and make them sound very easy. So she made hits out of songs that would be even changing key signatures where the time is moving all over the place. Stevie Wonder's he's probably the greatest example of this. Stevie's songs, you can sing along to them and not realize how complex the chords
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
because the chords are moving and undulating and modulating and doing all these things, but the melody on top is just floating along and everyone's singing along. Like somebody in a coaching session I was in yesterday put me on the spot, and I can play by ear to play "Don't You Worry About a Thing," and it's a song because I know the melody. Everybody's got a thing, but some don't know how to handle it. Everybody knows that song. I'm gonna say everybody, but many people know that song. But it's like I found myself like, oh, when I got to the chords, I thought I knew them because I could play by ear pretty well. But I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know these chords like I thought that I know those chords
Mm-hmm.
because the chords are moving in these very complex jazz words. Ah, ah, ah. He's in this chromatic, but those chords are jumping in this jambalaya, doing all these things. I'm like, ooh, next time you come back for your next session, I will have learned those chords. Forgive me, I thought I knew them better than I did intrinsically. But the point I'm making is that Stevie Wonder writes these memorable, gliding,
Mm-hmm.
connecting, warm melodies. So as a songwriter, the thing that I would always try to focus in my collaborations is what is the melody? A lot of my songs, or my bigger hit songs, were written to producers who gave me a track. And I
Mm-hmm.
would take the track and write lyrics. What they call that it's a British term. They call it in the industry top liners. I would have been considered a top liner. So people would give me tracks and I would write to the tracks. The first thing of the tracks that I would come to me would be the melody. It's like, well, what melody? Sometimes it's words, sometimes it's like a turn of a phrase that I think is cool, or sometimes the track makes me feel certain words and certain phrases or certain ideas or moods. But the most important thing is like that would come to me organically and intrinsically would be the melody. Sometimes, like to give you another story that's a great story, is Allie Willis, rest in peace, a great songwriter, never met her. She got one of her big breaks with writing with Maurice White, who's just featured in their documentary that Questlove about Earth, Wind, and Fire. And one of her
Hmm.
first big breaks was co-writing with them September. And so she bumming around LA trying to network with different people, and she got invited to write with Maurice White. And she's so excited to write the best lyrics that she could write. And she wrote those gorgeous lyrics. September's one of the most iconic songs
Right,
of the.
right.
But when she was writing, they insisted that they keep the party and she was like, no, 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 give me a day or so. I'll write words that match the rest of the song to that. And they were like, no, that stays. And she was like, but why? In these lyrics, and she said, no, it doesn't. And they were like, that part is going to be part of what's going to make the song. And she said she thought they were dead wrong. And she said they were absolutely right.
Right.
And so she said, people actually, she said, it's, it's poured my heart and soul trying to write the perfect lyric to it. And I'm proud of what I wrote. But till this day, the most thing that people remember the
Remember.
most about that song is Badia.
It's funny
You
because
know what I mean?
when you're talking about that about the melody, I'm thinking about you use the simple example of Happy Birthday, which is probably one of the first songs most
Yeah.
people learn. But when you hear it in different
Hmm.
languages, you kind of know what you're hearing for
Yes.
sure. And we're heading. We were talking before I started recording. We're heading to a jazz festival in Europe, and they bring in
Sure.
artists from all over the world. And we saw a guy
Yeah.
last time we were there, Seu George from Brazil, and
Oh yeah,
he
he's a great artist. I've seen him in
I'd
concert. I love him.
never heard of him before, and we sat there riveted for an hour, not
Hmm.
understanding a word he was saying and enjoying every
Yeah.
minute of it because something about the song and the energy in the room that he was bringing from the stage was just you
Yeah.
couldn't describe it, and that feels
I
like
mean,
melody in
Brazilian music
action.
has some of the most beautiful melodies. Just take your breath away. I mean, there's a song, I think Ivan Lins wrote it called The Island. It's been recorded many times by Patty Austin, may have done the first recording of it. Sarah Vaughan sang it, Barbara Streisand sang it, but it's this gorgeous melody. And when Sarah Vaughan, who's my favorite version of it, sang it, she sang the first verse a cappella. It kills you. She sings the first voice a cappella. She's like, and she's humming with the
Hmm.
robust
Hmm.
melodic tone that she has. She's the tone of life. Because melody is very connected to a vocal tone.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And people, the way they talk, their voices have melodies. Melodies, even the way that you talk has melody to it. But like even Whitney Houston's, for instance, Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You," that was a famous story where that was not recorded with intentionally a cappella. There was music behind it, but somebody somehow in the studio, somebody either suggested it or made the decision that it should just open with Whitney's a cappella because her vocal tone, the
Right,
sincerity
right.
of her vocal quality, and that beautiful, innocent melody. I had a story like that when we were recording If You Love Me for Brownstone. I sang the demo first, and the demo had the beats, the beat going on the verse in the track. But Dave decided at the session that he wanted Nikki Gilbert to sing it with, he wanted to take out the drums. She had a hard time because there was no click track or, it was hard for her to keep in the time. I said, Dave, why are you taking out the drums? And I was very early in my career. And Dave was like, because, and he just, started basically shutting me down. He was the industry legend producer. I was not. He's like, Gordon, you work with her, you lead me to the producing. People need to hear these words. That's what
Right,
he said.
right.
People need to hear these words. What he was saying was talking about the lyrics, but I think he was also talking about the melody. So to this day, when you hear If You Love Me on the radio, which thank you, Jesus, that 31 years after its release, it still gets, played and sampled and, used in films. Thank you, Jesus. I'm living in a brownstone in Brooklyn that I helped buy with the money that the song recorded by Brownstone earned. But to this day, when I hear it, you hear hear the lyrics, but you also hear the melody nakedly with just the keyboard, and it's
Hmm.
it's haunting and beautiful to me to this day.
Gordon, when you think about melody and song, I want to know, where did you get your start, or when do you first recall being drawn to it? Was it one of those instant things? We've had guests on who said, the first moment it hit me, I knew like this was my
Yeah.
thing. Did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, I mean, my mother tells me that when I was a child, a toddler, Luther, back when I was a child. Anyway, that melody just came to my mind. I have melodies, by the way, and lyrics in my mind all the time. Like there's always a back song singing in my mind. And my good friends know that like I'm one to like burst out into
Just
songs. Like I've lived like an opera. Like this, I just talk in song lyrics because I love songs. Literally, as you asked me that question, I had that melody and lyric in my mind. Mommy tells me that as she was bathing me at when I was like 2, she was giving me a bath, and she said she was leaving. He's leaving. She was singing that back last night, and she said she heard the baby go leaving, and she said the fact that I heard the background part, the Pips part, and I heard it in tempo and in tune. She was like, "My child is musical. My child is musically
hmm
gifted." It was after we moved to Teaneck, New Jersey. There were public school music lessons that were offered for free, which is why to this day I love to be involved with causes that are for public school systems of New York and furthering education. I sit on 2 boards around youth education and arts
hmm
education in New York. But that's my way of paying it forward. We moved to Teaneck, Jersey, and they offered free lessons. So I first took the trumpet. That was my first lesson. My brother wanted to play the piano, so my parents got him this piano. He started, but then really didn't continue. I fell in love with the piano.
hmm
And once I started taking my piano lessons, something about playing piano, although I had my like classical music that I needed to learn from the piano teacher, something about having access to the piano, more so than the trumpet, led me to hearing songs, writing my own little songs.
At what
And
age? At
so
what
I
age,
would get
Gordon? At what age were you when you
like
started writing your
like
own
eight,
songs?
like 8,
Wow.
and I would get on the piano and write songs and like ask for like music composition paper and write my somehow learning classical music about it. I was never going to be the great classical pianist that my music teacher wanted me to be, to her great chagrin and frustration. However, I'm so grateful to Miss Bernice Chauvin was her name for all the years of discipline that I spent in practicing with her because I learned the power of practice
hmm
and I learned the structure of music and I learned that from the exploration of how songs were constructed, it stoked this delight in me of how to write my own songs. So melodies would always come to my head and learned how to, self-taught how to put chords behind them. I just became this childhood hobby and I'd show my parents, look at this song that I wrote. And I remember in the 6th grade, we had this assignment to read the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull,
I have it on my shelf.
childhood book. We were supposed to like write a little childhood essay about it. And I remember I told my teacher, whose name I can't remember, my 6th grade teacher, I said, I didn't write a paragraph about it. I wrote a song about it. She said, really? Let me hear it. And I sat down at the piano and she said, that is beautiful. And she said, she said, I'm going to talk to the principal and see if you can teach that to all the 6th grade kids, the whole 6th grade, if you can teach that song to them and see if we can have this song at the graduate. And she advocated for me. And she went to my childhood principal, Mr. Perazza. Perazza was his name. Wonderful man. And that's what exactly we did. And I taught it to all the 6th grade teachers, 6th grade kids, and taught them. And the music teacher learned the chords from me, and she played it better than me because she was a better pianist. And I taught it, and that was my first public performance of a song. So it just became a way, like, and see, when we moved from the Bronx, which was all Black and Latin, pretty much Jamaican and Latino neighborhood, to Teaneck, New Jersey, which was more integrated, largely Jewish and Black neighborhood. But I had never lived around any white people at all in my life. There were those racist microaggressions of kids, who didn't want you to come to their house. They'd come to your house.
hmm
They would come to your house, play with you, eat your food, but you weren't invited to their houses. And so it was a situation of learning how to just feeling and empathically feeling some triggers and loneliness and missing home. When I say home, like the Bronx where we grew up and where my childhood friends were. And I think that led to an early fascination with the piano and an escapism. Sometimes my parents would argue, as all couples do. If there was tension in the household, I would find myself going to the piano. Like the piano was home for me. And by the piano, I could play, I could write, I could practice piano with, whatever I was supposed to be practicing with my classical teacher. I would play, I would teach myself songs on the radio to play by ear, teach myself how to play by ear. It just became this place of comfort, of exploration, of creativity, of laboratory. is a word I would say.
And so it started early. You had your sort
Yeah,
of, I'll say you had your coming out party in sixth grade. And then
yeah.
were you just on that path? You mentioned that you graduated high school early, went to college. Were you on the path to do music from that point? It wasn't like a big turning point where you woke up as an adult and went, I should do music. It sounds like you were well on your way to doing something in music, whether it was writing, performing, producing.
Yeah, I think I was well on my way. I think it chose me. And then like later on, by high school, it was really full on. Like we were
Right.
in band. Me and my friends, we were serious. We had a 14 or 15 piece band called New Progressions, and we would give concerts. Like we would give concerts
Right.
in the town where like over 1,000 people would come. We were like our little local Earth, Wind, and Fire. We had horns and three singers and two drummers and keeper. I mean, we were serious. We were really good. We probably to this day together. New
You,
progressions. And I'm still friends with some of the members. One of the members, Frank Brown, and I are still friends to this day. We were serious. And my father started to book us for some gigs, and the word got out. We got a little gigs for like little functions and fundraisers in the neighborhood. By high school, I was getting more serious and meeting other singers. There were other singers near who lived in Teaneck and Inglewood, New Jersey.
mhm.
Regina Bell and her younger brother Bernard Bell, they lived nearby. The group members of Today, which was a group
Oh
that
my
Teddy
gosh.
Riley had signed, kind of a
Yeah.
new jay, they were neighbors. So these were people who were older than me, but Teaneck was a town that was the Isley brothers lived in Teaneck, Kool and the Gang lived in Teaneck. Teaneck had this a bit of adjacency to fame, but people lived in Teaneck because, they had good public school systems. So I started to like collaborate, play the piano or be in bands or to hang out with other people that were in music that were much older than me that became early collaborators, early mentors. Lenny White, the great drummer who was in Return to Forever, was a childhood neighbor, and he started to let me come to his home studio. So by high school, I was full on. And by college, it became even more so, where I was in jazz band in college and joined the gospel choir at Brown University called Voices of Inspiration, and started with a friend of mine, Nichelle Maynard Elliott, a singing group on college that lives to this day. She's and I started called Shades of Brown, and we would do full-on concerts. We would do reviews. We did a Quincy Jones review. We would do all
Mhm.
the songs like the Anita Baker. We do the hot. So we do these. I mean, these concerts were serious. People to this day, alumni talk about when they went to the Shades of Brown concerts in our era.
I,
Even so much that the students now who are in Shades of Brown are like, "Oh my God, are you Gordon Chambers? We heard about you." 30 years later,
if only we had social media back then, you
if
would have
we
been.
only had social media. But I mean, we were very serious. Like by high school and especially college, I was very serious about anything I did in music. I was not playing around. I did not play. I was not one to yell and scream. But if you were going to do music in my presence, you were going to do it right.
Gordon, I want to talk about what's special for you about your home in melody and song. And where should we start? We've covered a lot of ground already, but I want to get into it a little bit deeper.
Guide me, O Jehovah, as the song says. You just tell me.
What is the connection that you have with your audience and with the people that are performing that you're coaching? Are you is moving people and connecting with people part of what's special for you?
Yeah. I mean, when I coach people, I'm really looking for them to find their confidence, to find out who they are. It really has nothing to do with music. It really doesn't. It's music is the modality, music is the medium. When I coach people, what I'm coaching is your confidence, your liberation, and your freedom of expression. Like I'm really trying to get you to unlearn everything that you think that you've learned that you need to survive. And when I say that, a lot of times we, as human beings and as adults in the world, we make ourselves smaller and we make ourselves more appropriate. We make ourselves more detached. And I'm trying to actually get people to get more raw and through music into expressing themselves. Like, how do you really feel? If you feel sad, let you sing this song till you're moved to tears. If that's what the song moves you to do. Because by your doing that, you might sing a song that could heal somebody else and help evoke them and unlock in the listener deep down pain that they've been afraid to feel, that the music can help them feel, or joy, or praise of the Most High. Whatever the song calls for, I'm trying to get them to get into unabashedly whatever the meaning of the song really is. Because songs are the mirrors of our emotions. I mean, people cry in my sessions very often. I don't think it has anything to do with me, but it's something's happening through me. I'm letting God come in the room, praying that God gives me the words to come through so that this person can see themselves and they can see and hear themselves. I mean, sometimes I move to tears. There are many times in my coaching sessions I act like I have to use the bathroom and I don't. I just need to I'm so moved, I'm so overwhelmed by God and the spirit of God moving through the room
Right.
and moving through just two people being together in song that it moves me to tears. But sometimes I don't want them to see that. It's just powerful. Like people suppress so much just to get through the day, just to survive. We become these suppression machines. Sometimes in my coaching sessions, I just say, okay, yell.
Just let it
And I've
out.
told people to just, I've said yell. They're like, I had a hard day and blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, scream it out. Like I admit that John and Yoko Ono went to like some kind of scream therapy. I'm like, just scream,
I'm
yell.
I'm hearing you describe this, and it's funny. There's a whole bunch of companies that talk about bringing your whole self to work, and the truth is, most people don't. And
No,
through my photography, I've had a chance to meet a lot of artists from a lot of different disciplines and a lot of different areas in the arts, and it does feel like you get an entirely different view of a person when they're
yeah,
doing their art and they're letting that out, and you find out that somebody who is super buttoned up disciplinarian corporate person has an artistic side. Meeting people on the trip that we were on and knowing they had
hmm
this huge artistic side, photographers and singers, and you find out that our gracious host was a dancer and all these things, and you're like, oh, there's actually a whole person, and it sounds like you get to
totally
bring the rest of the person out through song in
the
your
person.
coaching.
And people are so, I remember this student I coached, she had a choir director who was very mean, as they can be, and that people have trauma from those
Right.
experiences. They give up on singing. So somehow she found out about me. She and I used to work at Essence, and she found out that I coached, and she got in contact with me. She wasn't trying to pursue being a singer. She works in corporate America, but she was being asked more and more publicly to take a more public role in her company. And she kept on saying, no, 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 no. And then one day she called me long after we had done our sessions. This was like a year later. She called me in tears. I thought something, terrible had happened. She said, Gordon. And I was like, oh my goodness, poor thing. Her, maybe one of her parents had died. She said, I'm calling because I'm so happy. This is almost bringing me to tears now. She said, I'm so happy. I said, what's going on? Because I thought something was, she said, I just spoke at a convention in front of 7,500 people. She said, I would have never been able to do this if it wasn't for you.
Wow.
She said, I don't even know how to thank you, but I just want to call to say thank you. She was in tears and something in her unleashed. But when you're recording in the studio, this is what you're doing. I mean, you as a photographer, you probably see people. You see their light. You see the light in their eyes. You see their soul. You see their expression. You kind of like through the camera, through your eye, you see who they really are. Sometimes in a way that they don't even know, and you capture that. When you produce records in the studio, that's what you're doing. You're looking for truth. You're looking for like you're trying to get a singer to sing a song to the melody because they got to follow the melody so that people will understand what the song is. They got to interpret the lyrics so people will understand what the storyline is. But you're looking for truth. You're looking to hear that moment when that singer connects with that lyric and that melody in a way that reveals something about their lived experience that reveals truth. So when I coach singers, I'm looking for the truth of their voice. When I sing, I'm singing through the truth of my voice. I'm not trying to imitate. I may emulate, but I'm not trying to imitate anybody. When I sing and when I sing at my best, I'm bringing my truth to what I'm singing. When I hear music that moves me, what moves me about it is I can hear the singer's truth. Like there's one particular performance that I love on YouTube deeply. I don't think she ever recorded this song, but it was Dionne Warwick singing a cover of Stevie Wonder's All in Love is Fair. And I don't think she ever recorded it, but she used to sing it some in the 70s. And it felt to me like she may have just been going through maybe a divorce or something like that. There's something powerful and truthful that I hear in that performance. And so those are kind of like some of the examples of things that I might play in a session. Tell me your truth, no matter what it is. Growing up, I loved deeply the song. One of my parents' favorite songs was Pata Pata by Miriam Makeba. It's a very simple song. It's a song about a dance. This was written and performed deep in apartheid. It's this joyful song about a dance, and she has a narration where she tells the truth about the song. So this is during apartheid in black clubs, shabeens they're called, where people do this dance. And so this is during times of horrible, horrible social injustice, yet there's a freedom and a joy that you can hear. That was the truth. That was the truth of the hope that people were having in horrible times. That was the truth of their hearts, and it comes through the songs. I recently worked with Tyla, coaching her to sing the South African national anthem for one of the World Cup games where South Africa was playing Mexico. And she was backed by this choir, beautiful youth chorus from Johannesburg, the most wonderful singers, six young singers. And we were doing the arrangement and helping coach everybody put the arrangement together. And I said to them, I said, you know what I love about South African singing? I said, it's the sound of joy as resistance. The instructor, who was traveling with them, he said, yes. He got so excited that I heard it
Hmm.
and, that way and said it that way. It was just so beautiful. I took a selfie with them, and voices have spirits.
Gordon, coming off of what you just said, I do want to ask you about the storytelling aspect. When we were preparing, you mentioned that songs are stories and you're helping people tell
Yeah.
their story. I'm curious, whose story do you feel like your songs are telling? Are you trying to get it out of the artist and that's what's special because you're helping them express the way you just described? Or is it your story and you're telling your story through the instrument of someone else's voice or someone else's talent? What's the line that you draw that or the way you would describe that? Because storytelling is a special part of what you're doing. And I'm just curious, like, what's the story and why is that so special?
Because the story is about humanity. I mean, I think all art is a story. I mean, I think photography is telling a story. The camera is helping tell the story of what it's capturing, especially portraiture.
Mm-hmm.
The camera is an art form of telling the subject's story. A movie is certainly a story. A novel is a story. Music is a story. The songs that stay with us is because of the stories that they tell. We connect with it, such that when we're in a joyful mood, there's songs we want to play, and a somber mood, there's songs we want to play. You have your go-to songs for what you want to feel and what you need them for. That's because the stories are well told.
But whose stories are you telling or the artist telling? You mentioned at the top, I apologize, and I know you worked on another song that is one of my favorites,
Sure.
No More Rain. Is
Oh,
that is that your story, or is it the artist coming to you saying, "I have this thing that I'm trying to get out or put
well,
it"?
Anita came with that idea. She
Okay.
came with that idea of I apologize. It was her title. She had that title, and she and Barry Eastman started it, and then I scripted it. It was
Okay.
their concept, and it was just that. It was just those lyrics, and I fleshed it out and told a story to it. So as I was telling the story, I was kind of trying to imagine a story that I thought that she could tell. I didn't know her, but I was a major fan of hers, and I had read that she was a very particular kind of boss lady, that she was serious about her music and just the way she did whatever she did. This was years ago. So I'd read that, or there was read that about her through stories. So it just came to me like, but the title was her title, like, what would it feel like? What would it look like for a person like that who's, got a certain imperiousness about themselves to give that up to somebody that they love
Hmm.
and say that I love you more than my own ego. And I tried
Hmm.
to flesh that out and just access vulnerability. And I've tried to paint it in a melody that she could relate to, that matched her vocal tone and stuff like that. I knew that she loved jazz from having been a fan of her. So I've
Hmm.
intentionally put a lyric in there. But come rain or shine, I'm gonna do right this time. Referencing the great jazz standard. I'm gonna love you like nobody's loved you, come rain or shine. Like I intentionally put quoted another jazz standard in the song to just stoke that part of her that was a jazz standard lover. But I was just trying to think about something that she could relate to. People have asked me personally when you wrote that, song, what were you thinking about? What people trying to get in my
Right.
business? What were who are you apologizing? I'm like, get out of my business. But I really was like thinking about not apology. I've never had a problem saying I'm sorry to somebody. Never. I was really, to be honest, thinking about apologies that I was owed.
Yeah, as I was preparing for this, I heard you refer to that, and I was like chuckling as I was getting my story together here. But it is interesting though, because what I'm hearing is that regardless of where the artist is in terms of concept development, you meet them where they're at and try and get it
Yeah,
to where it can be great for them. And that
yeah,
collaboration is really neat because it's not that they're coming saying, "Here's exactly what I want, Gordon. Put words to this," or I don't know
yeah.
what. Just give me an idea. It is a little bit of a back and forth and a collab in a way that I don't know that most
Totally.
people really appreciate.
People don't really know how songs come together. Like, and No More Rain, rest in peace, Angie. I just went to Clive Davis's funeral last week, and it was this beautiful. I mean, it was just tremendously beautiful and appropriately grand and elegant and
Mm-hmm.
legendary. It was just one of the most beautiful, ceremonies I've ever been to. Just the flowers, the church, the synagogue. It was just beautiful, beautiful. And there was a woman there working there, and somehow on the team, like on the hospitality team, she looked just like Angie Stone. And I said, "Oh my goodness, you remind me so much of Angie." And Angie's had been the last like industry homegoing I had been to. Angie, similarly, one of Clive Davis's A&Rs, Peter Edge, who worked for Clive at that time. He's now COO of RC, something huge. But at that time, he's one of Clive's A&R people. He had signed Angie to Arista, and that was the last song recorded. But Clive didn't like the bridge of the song, so they kept sending it to. He kept making her work it, rework it, and so he was like, "Gordon, can you come to the studio like now?" I'm like, "Okay." Angie's there, and we got to get this turned around very quickly. I went to the studio and she didn't know who they were sending, but I knew Angie a bit from the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there. So she plays me I didn't even know what it was. She plays me what it is. She comes, she said, "Oh, child, I'm so glad it's you. Blah, 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 blah. They done bring me through the record." She's telling me the whole story. They done bring me to the record. Blah, blah, blah. They just sent me send me. She's telling me the whole story about how frustrated she is. She kept on saying, "Child, listen, child, this was SoundCloud." So, so finally, I just let her vent for like an hour because she's just over it.
Mm-hmm.
So then, she's talking, she's playing me the song. I said, "Okay, let me try to see what comes to my head." And then just listening to that whole story, her tell the story, and she played me the bridge. The words that came to me was, "Spring has come, but winter's gone, my love. But don't look around for me, child." And I put the child in the child. I'll be gone, not afraid because the seasons have changed. I'm going to count my blessings and just follow the sun because my sunshine has come. That was the bridge that I wrote. We recorded it. I did the background vocals. She recorded it. They sent in the new demo of it right away. And Peter called me the next one. "Gordon," and this is British accent. "Thank you so very much. We're very happy. Clive is so happy. Gordon, you've saved this project. You've saved this album. Thank you. We're going to get this done." And they rushed it to radio. It became like they had been trying to get this finished so they could rush the album out. It was the first single and did extraordinarily well.
And
One of
for people who don't know Angie Stone, prior to preparing for this, actually, Gordon, I mean that
Yes,
album is well over a decade old. I was literally just
yeah,
listening to it last week because I was like, you know what I
yeah,
need today? I need to hear Angie Stone.
yeah.
I mean, this is a
It,
classic album.
yeah, so that album is flawless. It's a big, first two albums are flawless from beginning to end. That was Angie Stone's debut album. She had been in a group prior to that called Vertical Hold, and she had been a co-writer with D'Angelo on his album,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a child together. So Angie, it was a big thing, Angie, for Angie to get this solo record out, and that collaboration helped her to get that first single out, and it did extraordinarily well, helped launch her, put her on the map. But it very much reflected her personality and a story that she was telling me, my contribution to it. And when I went to her funeral, I was really touched that the back page of the funeral, there was a beautiful big booklet, but the back page was this big, beautiful picture of her. And it was just those words. It was the words of the bridge of the song.
Wow.
It was just not even the whole song. It was those words because it almost sounded like it was talking about not afraid because the seasons have changed. I'm going to count my blessings and just follow the sun. It sounded like ascendance. It sounded like somebody who's made transition. And and I just was like, look at God. You know, he put me in that room at that time to help her tell her story.
Gordon, as we start to wrap up, I just want to ask you one more question because, as I just mentioned in the last part of our conversation, I mean, you've worked on some songs with some artists that are truly timeless. And do you think about the contribution you're making in the context of legacy, which may be a little loftier than you would want to describe it, but you are
Hmm.
creating things that last. I joke with my team about I want us building pyramids, not fancy sandcastles.
Mm,
The tide comes in and
I love
washes
that.
it away. I want us to make something that stays, and you're actually doing that like every day, and you're training the next generation of leaders who are going to pay it forward as well. Is that something that resonates with you, or that is special about what you're doing?
Thank you so much. I mean, at the time, no. I mean, I pinch myself every day. I'm like, I had no idea that like 90s R&B at the time, I'm like, that was my period,
Classics.
would become thought of like this time of like this it would be memorialized or thought about as this golden time of music, like this like time like I had no idea. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, so I was listening to all those beautiful Gamble and Huff songs and Ashford and Simpson songs and Motown and Stax, and listening to songs about black love. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
heard. And Bob Marley and spiritual liberation and Nina Simone. That's what I heard in my parents' household at their parties. That's what they played. Those are the records that my father bought every Friday night, and friends came over. So I just, through osmosis, I heard that kind of music. So as I was starting to, and it was, as I was starting to study music in the bands I was in, I was studying the Earth, Wind, and Fires and the Lionel
Mm-hmm.
Richies and Quincy's and Michael Jackson and Prince in the 70s and 80s. I started to study that in my childhood artistic development. So when I started to write it, I was just trying to emulate, be in conversation, so to speak, of what I heard. It moves me more than I could ever say that now, just like I was inspired by that movie and that music that I heard in the 60s and 70s as a child, that now I meet these younger artists that have such reverence for music that I wrote, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that none of any of this was going to stick. None. And I'm beyond, I'm beyond the beyond. I'm just so grateful. And I'm grateful to the internet. I'm grateful to social media because very often people, Instagram influencers or just music fans, some with bigger followers than others, will do these things that will sometimes go semi-viral about songs of mine. Either
Mm-hmm.
clips of interviews that I've done like this will go and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, reach other people and do what they do. But also just people like there's this social media influencer named Dominique who did this whole 5-minute take on the song One Voice that I wrote for Brandy, which was not a single, but it is one of my favorite songs
Right.
I've ever written. That is one of my mother's favorites. And if I were to pass away, just like how that Angie Stone song, that snippet helped memorialize her, like I would not be mad if people were to take one part of a song or lyric that I wrote, if they took from Brandy a song that heals, a melody, which has been what we've been talking about, of reason and freedom, with words that will speak for the weak, the hopeful, and the strong. I'll sing it for everyone because there is one sky above. There's just one source of love. And if I've got, and I've written if I've got, but I really mean like if we've got one chance, one choice, I'll sing it from the heart. One song, one voice. I'm getting very moved unexpectedly right now, but I'm so grateful to God that God gave me talent, gave me parents, community, teachers, mentors that took the time, the money to pour into it. I'm so grateful. And I pour into others. I hope I pour into others with one iota of the love that was poured into me. My house, I'll never forget when I bought this house in 2000, and the minister who passed away, Reverend Carl Williams Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
asked me, I asked him to come and bless the house. And he said, give it a name. And I thought of it. He said, give it a name. And he said, and give it a purpose. And I named it Love Song. So my house is called Love Song. And he said, well, give it a purpose. And I said, I pray that this house is a place where people should come, all kinds of people, and be free to talk, express themselves, hope and dream, and be encouraged. That's my prayer for my home. And I'm so grateful that I've lived long enough to know that it has been that. It has been a place of refuge and a place of home and an incubator of dreams. To God be the glory.
Gordon, as we wrap up, I want to thank you for coming on today. And, a couple months ago, I read a book called Dilla Time about Jay Dilla. And it was a biography.
I'd love to read that.
It was a biography running through all the things that he did. And I didn't realize.
And did beats till the day he died in the hospital.
Exactly.
Oof.
But I didn't realize all of my favorite artists from the golden era of hip hop in the 90s had his fingerprints all over their albums. And I had really not heard of him until relatively recently, a few years ago, well after he had passed. And I kind of feel like I'm having that moment here. One of the things about the trip, and we won't get into who was on the trip and get into all of that, but it was sort of casual greatness. Like there was greatness on that trip, except nobody led with their CV, nobody led with their bio. We just enjoyed the company of each other. And then as I got to know people, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm among legends. And then I'm hearing you describe, and I do my homework. So I did my homework before this, and you dropped at least a dozen more names and songs where I was like, wait, that too? And so I feel like I'm having a Dilla moment here where I'm realizing that your fingerprints are all over, because I'm also a child of the 90s, the New Jack Swing, the Neo Soul era that you were touching with Angie's music. And it's amazing. And I'm so grateful that you took the time dealing with personal stuff. We're heading into a holiday weekend. You got family things happening. You got friends in town. And you made time on a holiday morning to sit and talk with me. If people want to learn more about you, spoiler alert, they can Google you. But where would you encourage them to go to learn more about your music, or if they want coaching, if they need some things to get off their chest and to express themselves?
Sure. Thank you for asking. My website is gordonchambers.com. I'm on Instagram as Gordon Chambers. It's Gordon Chambers. That's my Instagram. They can email me at gordon@gordonchambers.com or info@gordonchambers.com. But they can also DM me in Instagram. And that's where I'm really active, and I run all the pages and emails. I do it all myself. So please, people can reach out to me there. And if they want to support my solo albums, they're all on on all the streaming platforms. The first album is called Introducing Gordon Chambers, then Love Stories, then Sincere, then Surrender. So there's 50 songs that I've written, recorded. Like I said, many have collaborations with friends of mine. So if you like grown-up adult soul music, real singing, real songwriting, real instrument playing, there are 4 albums for you to dive into and share with your people and have a fabulous time at the North Sea Jazz Festival. Keith. Was there a Kevin on our trip?
Happens all the time. There was a Kevin.
I think it's Keith and Bevan. I think it's like I combined the Keith and Bevan. Do people ever do this to you?
My entire life, Gordon.
Okay, got it. Okay. It's like Keith Bevan. Anyway, I'm going to nickname you Kevin. But thank you for having me. Thank you for the interest that you take in people through this site, helping people to tell their stories. Thank you for the work you do as a photographer, capturing people's souls. I'm so glad we connected, and the best is yet to come.
Thanks for listening to this episode of My Home is Special. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get future episodes automatically. You can go to myhomeisspecial.com to see the full project and sign up for email updates. Be sure to follow KBevPhoto on Instagram or go to kbevphoto.com to see what I'm snapping these days. There's a lot on both to explore. For now, this is Keith, aka KBev, signing off. Peace.
I should ask you to sing something for me.
Oh my gosh, that would be a disaster. That's definitely not happening.